Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle. I am in charge of marketing here at AC Inc. And we're here with Angela Cote today. How's it going, Ange?
It's awesome. I'm always excited to be on your podcast, Belle.
Always. No, I'm really excited for our chat today. I always feel like podcasting with you is so fun. I always feel like you have so many insights to share. And for anyone who is kind of new to listening, because we're sharing this early October, I believe this episode's coming out, and we have just been at a bunch of in-person events. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is the Franchise Growth Pod.
Mm-hmm.
I love how on podcasts, it's like you have to remember when you're nodding that you have to say it out loud. You're like, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was like, I didn't want to talk over you. So I was like, what should I do? Okay. It's not my first podcast, but
So just as a brief background, if anyone is new to listening, first of all, sincerely welcome. We absolutely love all of our listeners. We love when you share insights from what you learned on the podcast or ask questions or suggest new topics. We've had that even happen a couple times in the past few weeks, even where people have sent in ideas or questions or wanting to expand on certain pieces from past episodes. So welcome. This is where we talk about all things franchise growth. Specifically, we obviously talk a lot about field coaching, coaching your franchisees for success, as that is what AC Inc. does. But we also talk a lot about like mindset and leadership, and really always tangible takeaways. They're very casual conversations, as you're going to learn here, but always wanting to make sure people leave with either a tangible idea that can be kind of put into action or an actual step, or sometimes many steps that can be put into action. We always want to make sure it's very tangible, everything we're sharing here today, even if it is very chill, record on Zoom vibes.
yeah, it's like, take what you can, take whatever you can get from it. And I gotta say, like, it's funny with how you've been doing such an amazing job bringing all the different team members on and sharing their different insights. And it's just really fun to hear, everybody's different perspective all the time. And anyway, yeah, sometimes it feels like, oh, why do I even need to be on there? They're all smarter than me anyway.
That's what I love about having it be a team podcast is that
Yeah.
we get to have everyone's expertise, and it's really fun. I obviously am in charge of putting together all our team profiles, and part of our profile deck that we put together for each of our team members is we put together like our specialty skills or the specialty areas of expertise that different members have and different people come to the team with, and it's really cool getting to see the variety of experiences people have had. And yeah, so if you are new, definitely go back and listen to a whole bunch of the podcasts. It's all very evergreen content. So we record and we kick off with a little bit of an icebreaker question, just to get to know the team and our clients and community a bit better, which is always fun. But then we get right into the content every time because we want to make sure this is kind of like a professional development moment you can have while you're driving or doing laundry or whatever. Okay, so speaking of icebreakers, Angela, this is the first icebreaker I've done that's like a bit deeper. So typically they're a bit more random, like what's your favorite pizza topping and things like that. But today I was just feeling called, by the spirit to to give you a question that's a bit more thoughtful. And so I'm curious, no pressure.
Not nervous at all over here.
So the icebreaker question today is, what is something that the version of you from last year, so this time last year, so back in September of 2022, what is something you from last year would be proud of the you this year for? So if you from last year, a year ago today, could look at what you're doing now in this fall, what do you think they would be proud of? Like, what do you think is like a difference or a shift or a cool thing you're doing now that you'd be really, really proud of, the past version of you?
Can it be like about professional or does it have to be about me in particular?
Either one. I think you're allowed to do either one. I'm
Okay,
making.
well, I'll do a quick personal one.
Mhm.
Because of this crazy Apple Watch I have, now I'm all about closing my rings every day. I was always pretty consistent with exercise, but it's really fun to get like, you closed a ring and then after 7 days you earned an award because you did 7 days. So what I've been doing is incorporating in on my days that I would sometimes maybe not have exercised in the past. I go for a brisk 30 or so minute walk. And oh my gosh, walking in nature, brisk walking in nature is my new favorite thing. I mean, I don't want to only do that because I still love cold water swimming, as you know, that's 1 day or 2 days a week. And then I have my pool swimming and I have my gym with the weights and the cardio. Like I try to really keep mixing it up, but that would be one thing as I've gotten way more, diverse and consistent, like even to the extent that if I can't do it in the morning, I'll at least get that walk in, in the evening, which I didn't used to do because it's crazy Apple Watch. So that's the personal thing that I'd be proud of, is that I've gotten really consistent. And then for a professional thing, the thing that I'd be proud of is, I can't say enough, the team, this team of people that we have, and getting to see, I don't want to divulge too many of our secrets because it all comes out at the right time from you marketing people, but getting to see the team work on some of the incredible initiatives we have going, seeing the team come up with things that in the past would have been dependent on me, and me being able to look and go, that really makes sense. And just kind of being able to oversee and watch for, like, if something doesn't maybe fit the AC Inc. brand or culture or vibe or anything like that, but to have been able to get more and more out of the granular, which is not my superpower. Like in one of our recent meetings, looking at courses and things, that my head was spinning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what would I do if I didn't have this team? Like I was messaging back and forth privately with Stephen going, oh, my head is spinning. But, being able to be in the right seat, I think and having the right team, that would be what I'd say I'm personally excited about, I guess.
Aw, those were both great answers. You win.
Yay. I was a little nervous when, like, even when you asked it, I was like, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I, like racking my brain.
Yeah, that's why it's an icebreaker. It's just kind of what's on the top of your head when the question comes. Okay, so we are gonna actually get just right into the episode today, though. This is a little bit of a different episode because it was actually prompted by conversations you've had. So we're not actually like going through a big guide or anything. Sometimes we do that where we'll like walk through actual steps of a process or things like that on the episodes. But today I want to ask you about, you were at a franchise expo somewhat recently, and you had two key takeaways. You came back. I remember I got the box and you were like, these are two things that is, and you often do that, right? You'll go to these events and learn a bunch and have these really great conversations. And part of making sure our messaging and our marketing is staying current and strategic and all of that, and connecting to the right people and talking about the right things, is that you share some of the big key takeaways from some of the sessions, and you always send me a message. And sometimes it's more like validating some of the things we already do or already know, but a lot of the times it's like kind of new information or like a new perspective on something that we talk about often. So you had two key takeaways from this expo that I want you to kind of explain a bit further, because I think it's less of a tangible key takeaway for someone to go implement exactly, but more of a key takeaway for a shift in perspective, like something we kind of have, maybe many people have thought in the past. And then this, based on the conversations you were having at this event, really did shift the way we've been thinking about these two key topics. So first off, is you had a lot of conversations it's an expo, obviously. So a lot of conversations with Fran Dev roles, not as many conversations with the operations leaders, which is typically, who we end up talking to a lot at like conference type events, right? Is more that space, or more the leadership roles, CEOs, that kind of thing. But you ended up having a huge amount of really good chats with these Fran Dev roles and people. And what you said to me was that you were having these really, really great chats, and they kept saying, as soon as they heard about field coaching and having a framework and having, having it built out in a way that works specifically for their concept, and having franchisees have, action plans and all these things that you were talking about that AC Inc. does, both, helping people put them together or optimizing what they currently have. As you were explaining that, these Fran Dev leaders were saying over and over, this is what we want. Like, this is something we have always wanted our systems to have more of, or to have better built out. Like, this is incredible. And that was such a different reaction than I think sometimes we assume Fran Dev roles will have to hearing about something that's really more on the operation side. So I want you to just expand a little bit more into, you're having these conversations, you're hearing people go, oh my gosh, I love this. We need this. Like, we need more of this. what was that like, and kind of what were some of the reasons they were giving, just to kind of give some background here?
Sounds good. So, yeah, there's a few things coming to mind here. So, of course, a Fran Dev person wants to see franchisees be successful because it means that it makes it easier for them to award more franchises, because they can say like, yeah, our franchisees are, happy, thriving, profitable, and you go talk to them and they'll tell you the same, right? So that's pretty obvious. But the thing that, and this is going to sound obvious to people, but it's just something we don't hear all the time. So that's the thing. It's like you said, it's more of a perspective shift.
Yeah.
The thing that I was hearing that I was like, that's interesting, I hadn't really thought about that a lot, is that the franchisee comes into the brand, and the person that they dealt with and worked with the most is the Fran Dev person. And of course, that person's guiding them. And along the way, of course, they meet, their potential prospective field coach, and, the marketing people and the CEO and maybe the founder, if it's still a founder led brand. And that's great. But who do they feel the most attached to? The person that that basically did the recruitment process with them. And so in like 8 months from now, the franchisee, because, they invest in the brand and things aren't going like they thought. And the Fran Dev, who do they go to? The Fran Dev person. That's their representative in their mind. That's who they built trust with. And so I'd heard that before and thought about that before, but hearing it directly from people in the Fran Dev role and saying, yeah, like this would be amazing. And that really stood out. And I'll just say that I think why it, or what was different this time versus maybe other times, is that I think I was able to give them some more tangible examples of what we mean. Because I think, like, I know, actually not, and I think we have the benefit of the having this line of sight on what a lot of brands are doing when it comes to field support. And so what we know is that it's really vague and random and inconsistent. And so what I think in the past was that if I were talking to somebody that didn't really know that side, they can't even visualize what I'm talking about. But in this case, I was like, for example, we do fractional field coaching, or for example, we can come in and run performance groups that are like to level up your franchisees. Or for example, we have an assessment that enables us and you to evaluate whether, there's gaps in the things that your field coaches, their skill set, that they need more training on, which will lead to this. So I think that providing that clarity was also part of why it really was getting its hook in them more, and them saying, yeah, we need more of that. And then again, back to like, they're the representative. So if they understand that's what the candidate is going to get, then there's a better chance they're going to end up happy and not call me in 8 months mad at me.
Totally. And that was really, and that's exactly what I was hoping we were going to get from just your further explanation, was talking about that. And as you said, the more obvious piece being, obviously we want better validators. And that's something we talk about actually a lot in terms of the value of field coaching and taking franchisee support seriously, right? Is that validation is super key to selling more units and awarding more territories and all of that. But as you said, that's more on the obvious side, and to actually hear directly from people in these Fran Dev roles that not even just the validation, because I think that's what we all kind of just turn to all the time, but as you were saying, like, to have it be that you have built so much trust with these candidates as you move them through the process. So you having a lot of trust that your coaching process and your support process is very proactive and is going to set them up with the right skills, but not only set them up, not only have great initial training, but actually that they're going to get to be coached ongoing to make sure that, like, their goals for their business, right? Do they want to work fewer hours? Obviously not right off the bat, but in the long run, right? In the next 10 years, like, would they love to be only working a few days a week or whatever? What are the goals they have? And having coaches in to support those and help build a business that works for their goals or hit certain revenue goals, right? Those things. To know that Fran Dev are so aligned on that, and not actually just like, oh yeah, it'd be nice, we'd have better validators. Like, to know that it's so much deeper than that is, I think, really helpful. And yeah, a bit of a perspective shift on something that maybe feels obvious, but it's really interesting when you're actually hearing it directly from people in those positions.
Yeah, that was super impactful just to hear it directly from people that feel it. And what I wanted to just add here is that it's partly because I think, you know, if they're a good friend dev person, they actually care, you know, they have morals and ethics and they want the franchisee to do well. But quite honestly, I think like there's also people out there that are like, it's also just a pain in the butt. You know, if the franchisee, I'm trying to do my job of awarding and like finding new franchisees and getting them through and getting them signed and getting them going.
Yeah.
And now being slowed down, like if we're just being transparent and honest, that's part of the problem is they're like, I can't do my job if you guys in operations aren't doing what really needs to happen to help them. So I think, and it was, I guess, just one last point on that is that, like I said earlier, if they can't visualize it, they were not aware of it. So they just kind of don't think about it. But also because what we have just really, really seen over the last few years with roundtables, people we work with and all that, is that most brands don't have this like really intense, you know, more proactive growth, not intense, I don't want to say, because I don't want to make it sound like it's hard to do, but this more progressive, proactive coaching, just nobody knows about it. So they can't visualize it. So they're like, wait, they're also like, I just learned something new, like that can be done. So that's really cool. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. And that's why obviously we love going to these in-person events and getting to talk to people who have, and here's the thing, so many brands have so many other incredible things going for them. And it's extra special when you get to add this proactive support, because that impacts your franchisees so much. So if you already have a great resource library and things like that, those things just get better because now they're being proactively coached to leverage them and use those research, right? So it all goes up, right? If you have other pieces of your brand that are doing well, maybe you have great systems and all those types of things, but adding this is not, you know, it's not taking away from anything. It's actually elevating all the things you're doing. And that's what's so special about the field coaching and that proactive approach. Still kind of similar. You've touched on it a little bit, but the other key takeaway you brought up when you were coming back from this event was that specifically talking to people who do franchise development for platform brands. So franchise systems that have many brands underneath them. And that's a very specific type of development, right? You're trying to find franchisees for maybe a few different brands, or, you know, maybe having some kind of leads, you know, sharing or whatever. Like you've got a very specific system set up. It's a very unique way to be attracting and recruiting franchisees. And you said you had a conversation, I'll let you obviously go into detail, but you said you had this conversation where they were talking about how franchisee support, like being able to support their franchisees, a couple of their brands had it and they were doing it really well in a specific way, but then some of their other brands under that same umbrella like didn't have the exact same program, and so it was kind of hard to like describe what they were going to get out of each one. Obviously the concept in itself is different, so your systems and operations and stuff would look a little bit different, but to be able to say, like when you were having these chats, to be able to say, and here's what our support structure looks like, and know that it's going to be consistent and know that it's going to be high quality across each of your brands, was something that was sounding so exciting. And I was just going to ask you a bit more about that, because I think that's something that's a really interesting part of coaching and support, is that when you do have that platform brand and each of their brands, some of them have different forms of franchisee support or coaching, it can be tricky for that Fran Dev role. So kind of going back to, again, how much Fran Dev was is related to this topic is kind of was one of those big key takeaways. But maybe just expand a bit more on what those conversations look like, because I think that was another interesting perspective we hadn't heard as much before.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it's out there, we knew it exists, but to hear directly from the Fran Dev person for these, you know, multi-brand or platform companies. So what happens is like, oh, we acquired this brand and they do their support this way, and we acquired this brand and they do their support that way. We all know, like, you can't change, like changing support in a franchise is like turning around the Titanic. Like it takes time, right?
Yeah.
So like, you can't just suddenly like, okay, well now we're going to like, okay, we just acquired you and now we're going to change the way you're supported. Because actually, first and foremost, those franchisees are probably freaking out because the brand got acquired. Now there's new leadership. I've been there myself through this as a franchisee, where you're like, oh, but the person I bought into is gone. And now you're going to change everything. So like, you know, what I believe they need to do is get it systemized and have some proof of concept to be able to say, like, if they do acquire a new brand, here's how we do it, and here's why, and here's the before and after of when we didn't do this, what it looked like and what it looks like now, and the ROI the franchisees are getting, the growth they're getting. So, and then also that the Fran Dev person was like, I don't even know like how to describe support because each brand is different, right? Like they're all doing it different. Now, again, in full transparency, what we mostly heard is that most of them, because of that, don't have, maybe one of the brands in the company has decent support, but the rest usually don't, because they acquire brands that didn't have it figured out yet. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's their goal, is to get it to be figured out, but they acquire these brands. And so often like their first brand, they have it somewhat figured out, right? Like company starts a franchise or a business, they franchise it, it's successful. Then they bring in the others, and those other ones often franchisees don't even know that they should be getting support. But imagine if you could give them something like performance group coaching sessions, or just a more, the framework that we recommend people use. So yeah, I feel like it really was getting the attention of the Fran Dev people when they were like, yeah, that would be helpful. It just sounded so chaotic,
Yeah.
So like, we're here to help.
I hope, so we're finishing up here just so everyone's aware, and I know it's a bit of a shorter episode, a bit of a different structure than we sometimes do it. But I think what was really interesting to me when we talked about putting together this episode was hearing it out in the world. So hearing these thoughts, and I think challenging that thought that coaching franchisees in a proactive way. So again, having awesome initial training, having awesome support, more operational support. So things like a hotline if something's going wrong, or things like a resource library. All those things are all great, and some brands actually do them like first, right? And that, it is important to have those done first because they help with the day-to-day. But to have really consistent, strategic, proactive coaching, I think can often, especially now as we're talking about it more and more, and the industry starts to become more and more familiar, feels like something that is so operational. Like it's so just something that's great for COOs or VP of ops, or the people who work in that operations side of the franchise. But what I just wanted to hear from you, and what you articulated so well in those kind of two key takeaways there, was just that challenging that idea that it's really just for the operations side, and really just for the franchisees and the COO and the VP of ops and the operations managers and all of those people. Like it's not. It actually benefits sales. It benefits franchise development. Folks feel way more confident talking about their support when there's a consistent strategic framework they know works, as you said, proof of concept. So I think it was just a really important thing to mention about that. Fran Dev and operations are not on opposite sides of a spectrum. They want the same things. They want more franchisees who are the right fit. They want them to thrive in the model. They want them to do well and make money and bring in more royalties and validate more. We all want those things, right? Whether you're selling to new franchisees and bringing in through that process, or whether you're helping them operationally run their business and more on that operation side. So I think it was just a really important key takeaway that as you were sharing that that voice note message, it really set off a fire in my brain of like, that's a really important thing to make sure that is super clear. And we're hearing directly from these franchise development folks, not just from like, oh, it would be good. It's like, no,
theory.
Totally. So I just want to thank you for diving into those two key takeaways there. I think that was really valuable.
Yeah. And I know you said earlier, like we did this a little differently it's not like, here's the process, but I think there is an action step here. And I think the action step is to take a look at what you are doing for franchisee support. Like, are you, could you stand there in front of whatever role you're in and you're listening right now? Could you stand there in front of somebody who's thinking of investing 200 or 400 or 1,000 or $1 million or whatever your brand investment is to get it up and running? Could you stand there and confidently say like, yeah, you're going to get like first class support, or progressive, and this is why we're different and we're better? Like, do you have that confidence? Like, that confidence comes across. Like a minute ago, you said, for the friend to have people to have the confidence. If they have the confidence, that energy will come across. And so it helps the sales so much. So I just want to say, I think there is kind of an action step there, is to go look at what are you doing for franchisee support, whether you've got 10 units or 600. We actually find a lot of the bigger, more established brands recognizing that they're lagging behind because just because they're bigger doesn't mean they have it figured out. They almost kind of can go the other way. So yeah, that's
I think that is a really, really good action step, and a good thing to just kind of consider. And obviously, if anyone ever needs support on any of these things, even if it's just to figure out where you're at or figure out how you measure up, right? Assess, based on what other people in the industry are doing. Reach out. We're always here. This was really more of an introspective perspective podcast, but the action step is, of course, to always connect if you do need support in those areas, because that's our favorite thing. And we're pretty darn good at it.
If we do say so ourselves.
But yeah, so Angela, thank you. I think sharing those insights was really, really helpful, even just for some perspective shifting. And then, I loved your action step at the end there. That was awesome. Anything else before we finish up here today?
Well, just one last thought popped into my head here is the other thing we were hearing a lot of is that, like, the Fran Dev people recognize that professional development for the people in the field is a good idea. Like, when they heard that we do that, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes sense. We're always looking for professional development. So I think it's also just a good reminder for everybody, when's the last time you did anything in terms of professional development on the operation side? So just that.
Love that. Oh, yeah, good reminder. Awesome. Well, I'm going to say it this time.
Oh,
thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Angela, of course. And hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week and go be awesome.